Welcome to the Hammer Territory Podcast. My name is Shawn Coleman. Hope wherever you are and wherever you are listening, you are having a good start to your week. It's Tuesday night, and of course, the Braves just played the Reds in the series opener in Cincinnati. And of course, we have plenty to talk about when it comes to the start of this week. And as always, I am very happy to be joined by my podcast partner, Stephen Tolbert. And just before we get into all that's going on, Stephen, I just want to tell you this. It's good to talk with you once again. I'm not excited about what we have to talk about when it comes to the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, what's up, Shawn? Yeah, I don't really. It's been a long season. It's been a very long season, and this has been one of the longer ones, quite honestly, relative to expectation. I mean, the Braves have had worse seasons than this, of course. The Braves have had much worse teams than this overall, but relative to expectation, frustration level, watching kind of the same game over and over, watching the same problems over and over. This has been one of the more frustrating years that I can remember, again, relative to expectations. So in the last, 3 days, and we're going to talk about two of them on this show, have just kind of been prime examples of why this season has been so frustrating. And yeah, we're going to get into it, but yeah, just I mean, I said it on the last show. I'll say it again. There is part of me that thinks this team doesn't really deserve to be in the playoffs because I think they are critically lacking in certain areas that good teams don't typically lack in, specifically fundamentals and, just kind of the small parts of the game that I think this team specifically has struggled with so much this year. I don't know that this team really deserves to be in the playoffs. They still have a chance to be, even after tonight's loss, primarily because they still have 3 games against the Mets. But if an honest opinion, I would say this team doesn't really deserve to be a playoff team, given on how they play. Now, the pitching staff does, but the way the offense, the defense, the base running, the way all of that has gone this year, I have a hard time saying this is a playoff team. But yeah, we'll get into it all last couple of days.
Absolutely. And I'm going to, it's been painful to watch the Braves play baseball the past 48 hours. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the pain, I guess is the best way I can put it, and just get it out of the way early in the podcast. So I want to go back a week ago. A week ago, the Braves played in their first of 2 games against the Nationals in Washington. And Stephen, that was one of the more complete offensive games that we experienced. We saw a combination of the Braves hitting home runs while also being able to deliver with runners in scoring position, showing that they were capable of doing what they needed to do, showing that this team has a ceiling that can be up there with nearly anybody offensively when it comes to the National League. That's what we saw. And then they went back to being normal on Wednesday. But then Friday and Saturday over the weekend. Friday, it was because of power. Saturday, they scored 10 runs without hitting a home run. This team showed 3 times last week that they are fully capable of doing what they need to do on offense, not only to get to the playoffs, but also to have success in the playoffs. And what did that lead to? That led to the fact that 48 hours ago, runners on second and third in the 8th inning of Sunday night's game. If the Braves can score a few runs, they had the potential to go into Monday being up a game on the Mets in the standings. But then they did not score a run in that 8th inning. And from that point on, over the past 48 hours, I cannot remember a time where a team has gone through so many different ways of showing showing the inability to score runs. Any possible scenario that you could think of, runner on third, no outs, second and third, no outs, any scenario that you could think of, the Braves have been through it over the past 48 hours, and when they weren't hitting home runs besides 1 or 2 times, they didn't get the job done. I say all that to say this. That is what is most frustrating about this team. We know they're fully capable of doing what they need to do to get to the playoffs and make noise in the playoffs. They just will not get it done. And over the past 48 hours, we've gone from potentially being on the verge to be up a game over the Mets entering Monday to now at the end of Tuesday night, we're 2 games back in the division with a lot of work to do and not a lot of faith we can get that work done.
Yeah. I mean, in the last 2 games against the Dodgers, they were 1 for 19 with runners in scoring position in the last 2 games against the Dodgers. And then tonight they were, I think, 1 for 8 or 2 for 8. I didn't actually look at the final number because I know they had one in the ninth inning. Hold on, I'll tell you real quick what they were tonight. 2 for 9. So that's 3 for 28 in their last 3 games with runners in scoring position. 3 for 28. And it's just continued the same thing. If they don't hit homer, and tonight they hit homers. They hit what did they hit? 2 homers, 3 homers tonight? Yeah, Michael hit one, Olson hit one, and Soler hit one. But of course, 2 of them were solo homers, and one of them was a 2-run homer. And then outside of the homers, they scored 1 run. And in this ballpark specifically, the Braves are playing in Cincinnati. That's like Coors Field. 5 runs is like 3 runs somewhere else. You got to keep scoring. You got to score 7 or 8 runs to feel comfortable in that part. And even then, you don't really feel comfortable. But yeah, 3 for 28 with runners in scoring position the last 3 games. And honestly, Shawn, it's not even the results that bug me so much. It's the at bats and the process that goes into these at bats. How many times this team's just swings at god awful pitches. How many times they get themselves out. Tonight there was a situation where the bases were loaded. The Reds were walking the ballpark. The Braves were having really good at bats. The Braves had the bases loaded. Travis d'Arnaud comes up. The first pitch almost hits him. And he takes it. The second pitch almost hits him, and he swings at it, and he pops it up to end the inning. That's just like that. Stuff like that just drives me insane. Like there's just too many guys in this lineup that they have no approach. They're just up there hacking and hacking and hacking. And it kills so many rallies. It was amazing watching the Dodgers the last couple of games just stack good at bat after good at bat after good at bat. Like guys just not getting themselves out. And I can just count on one hand the number of times the Braves have done that this year. Like it just never happens because they always run into somebody who's just up there hacking, just first pitch, no matter where it is, they're just swinging from their heels. And yeah, 3 for 28 in the last 3 games says it all pretty much with runners in scoring position. They have not, it seems like anytime they get in that position this year, like the quality of their bats just nosedives. I don't know if it's extra pressure because they failed so many times, but like that Monday's game against the Dodgers, they literally the first 4 innings of the game, they had second and third, nobody out. They had a runner on second, nobody out. They had first and third, nobody out. They had an inning that started with a single and a stolen base with no one out, and didn't score in any of them, which is like that's impossible. It's the odd you would have to try to do that to not score in any of those innings, and the Braves didn't score in any of them. And that's the part that annoys me. Like you don't need a great offense to be able to score in those situations. You just need a few competent guys that can situationally hit. And, again tonight, just at bat after at bat in key situations that are just garbage at bats. I mean, some of these at bats are just garbage at bats. Like, I know that's a strong word, and I know these guys are trying their best, but like when they get in these key spots, it's like they lose their head. It's like they forget how to be professional hitters and we're just going to swing at everything and hope it works out. It's just, I don't mean to rant. I know I don't want to spend this episode ranting, but it's highly, highly frustrating watching this team time after time after time after time get into big spots where they could break the game open, give their pitchers some leeway, give them some room for, margin for error. And it just seems like every single time they just have the worst possible at bat in that situation, or multiple horrible at bats in that situation, and come away with as few runs as possible. And we've just seen that same story, same play over and over and over and over and over again all season long. And it's been infuriating, quite honestly.
We get it. Mornings are nuts. No time for breakfast, but you need to get your day started right.
What if a delicious, nutritious meal could be ready in seconds? Support for Foul Territory is brought to you by Huel, the world's #1 complete nutrition brand. With over 400 million meals sold worldwide, Huel is trusted by millions of people looking to fuel their days with convenient, complete nutrition. Try it for yourself with this exclusive FT offer. 15% off with the code FOUL at Huel.com.
You know we're all about saving time, but we get hangry, like a lot. I recently fell in love with the Huel Ultimate Super Greens Powder, which is a perfect blend of 91 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients. I also love their complete nutrition bars, and those hot and savory pouches are fire too.
FT fam, give it a shot. Get 15% off with the code FOUL at HUEL.com. Unlock a healthier, easier way to eat with Huel. Nutritionally complete meals in minutes so you can focus on what really matters.
Well, and Stephen, the other thing that it's kind of tailed off a little bit from when we saw it, I believe, before the Braves went on their really hot streak to end August. We may have seen it a little bit in December, but it was back in early August when we saw the Braves, I believe, have a couple of 6-game losing streaks like within a month or something like that. But the other thing that stood out from Tuesday night in particular was the fact that it just wasn't the at-bats. It was other instances in which you're like, okay, these are plays that you have to make, and we don't do it, and it winds up costing us the opportunity to either extend the game or keep the lead or what have you. For one instance, a bloop single with 2 outs, you would think that, hey, run on contact, we should score a run in that situation. We don't. Another opportunity in which the left side of our infield, Gio Urshela as well as Orlando Arcia, they have the opportunity to potentially go get a softly hit ball. They don't go get it. So it's not just about the at-bats. You're exactly right. The very bad at-bats have been a constant struggle all season long. But in particular on Tuesday, it also was a ripple effect into other areas of the game where we didn't make plays where we clearly should be on high alert to make, and we still didn't. You're talking about this team not really deserving to make the playoffs. That's what we're talking about, I believe, or that's where, I don't want to assume, but that's what I think you're kind of hinting at. This team needs to be on alert to take advantage of every opportunity that it can, being aggressive to make plays any chance that it has. And it's missing those opportunities, and it's winding us, costing us games, and digging a deeper hole that we got to climb out of.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. This is not a fundamentally sound team. Like the little parts of the game, this team actually does very poorly. Like they're not a good base running team. They're not a good situational hitting team. They really struggle moving runners over. They really, really struggle getting runners in with less than 2 out. I mean, they're not a great defensive team. If you look at the metrics, they're a below average defensive team this year. Like if you just look at the fundamentals of the game, catching, throwing, base running, situational hitting, stuff like that, this team is not good at most of those things. And that's what I mean by I don't think this team deserves to be a playoff team, because like it can't just be homers. Like they have the number 1 pitching staff in baseball, or have for most of the year, the number 1 ERA in baseball. Like the bar to clear in terms of offense is pretty low in terms of being a playoff team. Like they didn't need a great offense this year to be a playoff team, but they're just so fundamentally unsound in so many parts of the game. And that's what frustrates me is, listen, if it was just, because of the injuries, if it was just like they're doing everything right, they're just not coming through with the results because Gio Urshela is playing instead of Austin Riley, or because, Ramon Laureano's playing instead of Ronald Acuna Jr. Like if that's all it was, it really wouldn't bother me at all. Like that, that's just that, those are just injuries. Those just happen. There's nothing you can do about them. But that's why I've said multiple times on the show, it's not just the injuries. And I think it's disingenuous and wholly inaccurate to just, whitewash it all under the headline of, well, they had a bunch of injuries, because I don't think that's what it is. And I think if you say that, you're forgetting a large part of the season where this team is just fundamentally unsound in so many areas. And, I don't know if it's a roster construction thing. I don't know if it's a coaching thing. I know a lot of people are going to point to the fact that Ron Washington and Eric Young aren't on the team anymore, and those guys were a big part of the base running and the fielding. And there's might be some validity to that. I don't know. But when you talk about the fundamentals of the game, like the little things that you can do to help you win, even when you don't have a a lineup full of Hall of Famers. Like the Braves have 3 or 4, maybe 5 good hitters, and then they have, a bunch of kind of replacement level players. But if you do the fundamental things well, then 4 or 5 good hitters in your lineup can be enough to win, especially with as good as pitching the Braves have had this year. Again, they have the number 1 ERA in baseball. Maybe not after the last couple of games. It might be like 2 or 3, but it's still like a top 3 ERA in baseball in terms of the team pitching. They didn't need a Hall of Fame offense this year. Just like a fundamentally sound one would have been sufficient. And they fail at too many fundamental parts of the game for me to call them a team that deserves to be in the playoffs.
And speaking of the playoffs, we've seen a little bit of this. When it comes to the playoffs over the past 2 years, if this team is not hitting home runs at a frequent pace, you go back to 2021, that's what won us the World Series along with the dominant bullpen. It was hitting home runs. But if this team is not hitting home runs, to your point, it's going to put them in a position to where they've got to put together the consistent at-bats, not only to create those run-scoring opportunities, but to convert them. And that is what is just so frustrating. And I know that we're, kind of repeating ourselves when we talk about this, but we've kind of, my whole point is that we've kind of seen glimpses. And that's what I think, to your point, is that it's not just about, okay, why is it happening this year? Like, we've known that it's happened frequently enough that that's a clear characteristic of this team. If they're not hitting home runs, they struggle to create and convert run-scoring opportunities. But it doesn't feel like it's just about this year. It feels like that may be a flaw in the makeup of this core moving forward. And I'm not wanting to be dramatic. I'm not saying that means that big changes need to happen if we don't make the playoffs. But I certainly think that we've seen enough to where if this team's not hitting home runs, they struggle to score runs in other ways, and that's something that has to change moving forward for them to truly be where they want to be when it comes to the ability to have success getting to and also having success in the playoffs.
Well, and the funny thing is they've hit home runs this year. Like if you look at the numbers, they've hit 192 home runs this year, which is tied for 5th in Major League Baseball. And the team that's 4th is only 1 home run ahead of them. So they're 1 home run away from being top 4 in all of baseball in home runs hit. But on the flip side, if you look at their on base percentage, they have like a 301 or 304. I have to look at it after tonight, but it's a like low 300s on base percentage as a team, which is like in the 20s. And so they're hitting a ton of solo home runs. They're a large part of it this year offensively has just been how unbelievably bad they've been in high leverage situations. Brad tweeted this out earlier today, but when they get in high leverage spots, I think they have the lowest WRC plus in the National League. And they've just, again, when they get in big spots, when they get runners in scoring position, big moments of the game, it's like they all lose their head and just, we saw it in that game against Walker Buehler, where the Braves, they made him throw 70 pitches in the first 3 innings. And you're like, all right, this is a really good approach. And then it's like a switch got flipped, and they just went up there hacking at everything for the next 3 innings. And he got like 9 outs and 25 pitches over the next 3 innings and ended up pitching 6 innings and helping the Dodgers, who had already used their bullpen a bunch. Like if the Braves had been able to get him out of that game early, who knows how the rest of that series goes. It's just like, I don't know what happens with this team, but it's just like, it's like Jekyll and Hyde, where you see these flashes of really good approaches, really good at bats, taking walks, not swinging at bad pitches, making guys throw the ball over the plate, and then doing damage on those pitches. And then like a switch flips, and then they just go up there hacking at everything. Just, it doesn't matter where it is. We're taking a mighty swing. We're swinging from our heels, trying to hit a ball out of the ballpark at every single pitch. And we've just watched them over and over and over again, go through entire games where they've been shut out like 11 or 12 times this year. They've lost 1-0 to the Reds, to the White Sox, to some awful teams. And again, they're tied for 5th in home runs hit. So they've hit home runs at an elite level relative to the rest of the league. And they're still struggling in offense because they can do nothing else. They can do nothing. They cannot score any other way. And if you're talking about next year and the makeup of the team and kind of the strategies of the team, the approach of the team. I know Chipper talked about this a little bit on the podcast he did a few weeks ago, and he was critical of how the Braves approach some of their bats where they're homer or nothing. They're not really changing their approach to try to get guys in. They're not really changing their approach to, drive in a runner from third with less than one out. They're just always trying to hit homers. And listen, if you hit enough homers to set major league records like they did last year, that approach can work. But what if you don't? What if you don't hit 307 home runs in a season and you only hit 192 like the Braves have this year? Well, this is what happens. You don't have enough other ways to score to supplement that offense. And that's what the Braves have run into. If they don't hit a home run, they don't score. And tonight they scored 5 runs. 4 of them were off homers and 1 was off something else. And that's pretty much how the Braves offense has operated all season long.
And if you want proof that you got to have multiple layers of offense to where if the homers are not there, you've got to be able to create and convert those run scoring opportunities. Just go back to the series, what was it, 2 weekends ago, where we faced, or I guess a week and a half ago right now, where we faced the Phillies, lost 3 out of 4. They got big hits in high leverage situations. A couple of them were homers, a couple of them were not. Look at what the Mets have done. The reason why the Mets it feels like they won't lose to a team that kind of like the Braves have done a lot this season. The Mets won't lose to a team that they shouldn't lose to. The Mets are consistently beating teams that they should beat. It's because they're taking advantage of creating and converting run scoring opportunities. The Dodgers combined power and being able to put good at-bats together. That is what is separating the teams ahead of the Braves in the standings right now and the Braves, because those teams can consistently do what we know the Braves are fully capable of doing, but they simply will not get it done. And again, I go back to, if we know the Braves are fully capable, but yet right now, when they know that they can't afford to go through another one of these stretches where they just cannot score runs, but yet they're still going through it, they've lost 3 straight, that to me is the ultimate sign that it's just very hard to find reason to have faith that they're going to figure it out offensively enough for them to even really have a shot at making the playoffs. They still do obviously have a chance, but it's just very hard to see it actually happening. But on the flip side of things, away from the offense for a second, Stephen, that stands out, Max Fried on the mound against the Dodgers on Monday night, Grant Holmes on the mound against the Reds on Tuesday. Grant Holmes, I think he did fine. He did his job. He struggled in the first inning, but Max Fried in particular against the Dodgers, 6 innings, 3 runs, only gave up 2 hits. I think he did good enough to put the Braves in a position to be able to win games. But the problem is that we've seen Max Fried be dominant, not necessarily to the point of Chris Sale so far this year, but Fried has been dominant at times this year. But if he's not that, when he left Monday night's game and it was 3-0, it felt like it was just a mountain the Braves would not be able to climb up to be able to get the win. And this goes back to the point. I'm not blaming the pitching, not trying in any way, shape, or form to shine a negative light. We're at the point in the season where it's going to be hard to expect the pitching to be as crisp as it possibly can be. But if our pitching is not that crisp, looking at the starting rotation right now, I'll get to the bullpen in the moment. If our starting pitching is not dominant, that means there's a good chance they exit the game with the other team having the lead, and that just creates a situation where it's hard to believe the Braves can come back.
Yeah, Max hasn't been, since he's come back from the IL, I think Max has an ERA kind of in the low 4s. His FIP and xFIP and all that are quite a bit lower. He's pitching to a little bit of bad luck, and Monday's game was a perfect example. He gave up 2 hits. But one thing has been his command. There's a lot of walks. Like, he had 3 walks. He had a hit by pitch. He had a wild pitch that ended up leading to a run. His command just has not been as sharp, and you can tell he's fighting it. He's not being very efficient with his pitches. A lot of 5 and 6 inning outings, a lot of 5 inning outings, quite honestly, where he's getting, 80 pitches through 4 innings or something like that. I don't know if he's still searching for his command. It certainly hasn't been dominant Max Fried that we saw before he got hurt. But it's been good enough to win games if the offense, like you said, I mean, against a really good Dodgers team and, fighting his command most of the night, he gave up 3 runs in 6 innings. So, if that's your bad night, you take that. And that's kind of been what he's doing. He's not really having any blow up games, which is obviously a compliment. Like, he's giving the Braves a chance to win the game. But with their offensive inconsistency and struggles, and we've said it all year, like if this pitching staff isn't perfect, if they give up any runs at all, most likely this team does not win. And it's held serve almost all year. And, again, tonight in Cincinnati, the Braves scored 5 runs, but you're playing in Cincinnati. It's a tiny, tiny ballpark. Like, again, 5 runs there is like 3 runs anywhere else. You got to keep scoring. You got to, no pitching staff is going to throw a shutout in that ballpark. Like it's damn near impossible. And the bullpen wasn't great tonight, and we'll get to that in a minute. But Grant Holmes was solid. The Braves had base runners everywhere. They left 14 guys on base tonight, but they couldn't add on because they didn't hit any more homers. After that Soler homer to make it 5-1, they didn't hit another homer, so they didn't score another run. And it's just the exact same thing over and over again. And yeah, Max wasn't his best, but he gave the team a chance to win. He's given the team a chance to win most of the time he's been out there. I do think it's fair to say he's been maybe a level below what his normal level is since he's come back from the IL, but still good enough to win if the offense was doing its job, which it basically hasn't done all year.
The reason I mention this again is not in any way, shape, or form meant to criticize Max Fried. It's hard to expect for anyone to be at the same level as Chris Sale, but that's basically what the Braves have needed the majority of nights. They need someone to be at a Chris Sale level to truly get them a chance to win. And when the pitching is not at that level, that puts even more emphasis on the need for the offense to be productive. But besides the offense, the other concerning thing that has really stood out, we've talked about the fact that the bullpen has really been used heavily, especially over the past 6 weeks. And I give credit to Brian Snitker. He's had to be aggressive with the bullpen because the Braves just at some point had to use the best parts of their team in order to win enough to stay in this race. And that was through using their bullpen, especially their best pitchers, Joe Jimenez, as well as Raisel Iglesias and others. But over the past 3 nights, it's pretty concerning to see the bullpen struggle as it is. Of course, the big blow up that Raisel Iglesias experienced on Sunday. On Monday night, it was just it was more of the lower tier bullpen arms that just got rocked by the Dodgers bullpen. But then on Tuesday, I thought that Brian Snitker, it probably is not to the level of other decisions he's made this year. I think that he left Jesse Chavez in a batter too long, and then of course Pierce Johnson gave up the game-winning home run in that 7th inning. I know that the offense being the way that it is probably overshadows the bullpen struggles, but this is 3 straight games, Stephen, where the bullpen has clearly struggled. You have to wonder if fatigue is starting to settle in, and if the offense is performing as it is right now, if we now have to be concerned about the bullpen not being reliable, that's just another big factor that has played a big part in us winning games this year, that if it's not reliable, it's going to make it even harder for us to win at the level that we've got to win at to have a chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they have to pitch. They have to be perfect. I mean, the number of games the Braves have won this year that they would not have won if the bullpen wasn't perfect that night is alarmingly high. And again, it's usually because of the offense. They've won I can think of just off the top of my head 10 or 11 games that the Braves won 3-2 or 2-1, where Johnson, Jimenez, and Iglesias pitched literally flawless, perfect baseball for the last 3 innings, and the Braves were able to hold on and win a game. And you and I have talked about this a bunch, but like if you just do that over and over and over and over and over and over and over again for 4 or 5 months, at some point that bullpen is going to start showing some cracks. Like you just cannot play all of these super tight, close games for this many months and not at some point have your bullpen pay the price for it. And the Braves have used Iglesias, they used Jimenez, they used Johnson, they've used Dylan Lee. They've used all of their bullpen, quite honestly, because they've played so many tight one-run games. And yeah, it's been bad the last 3 games. Some of that is because, the Dodgers are the Dodgers. And, Iglesias had that bad night the other night in the 9th inning. But again, it's a bullpen problem, but it's actually an offensive problem masked as a bullpen problem, because this was always, at some point, the bullpen was going to, it's just like the pitching. It's just like the starters. Like, at some point, they're going to give up runs. At some point, they're not going to be perfect. And you expect the other parts of your team to carry them in those times. Well, with this team this year, the offense isn't carrying anything. So, when the Braves go through periods where they're not pitching very well, or the bullpen's not pitching well, the offense isn't carrying anything. They just lose. And that's what's happened. The bullpen's had a rough stretch. The Dodgers scored a bunch of runs on them. The Reds scored runs on them tonight, and they lose the game because the offense can't cover anything up. So again, it is a bullpen problem. The bullpen is definitely shakier than it was, and understandably so. But in my opinion, it's really an offense problem that has required the high leverage guys to be used at the rate they have all year. And I think we're probably seeing a little bit of the consequences of that, with these last few games.
Well, speaking of the offense, Tuesday brought with it a bit of exciting news. We got a pretty good indication that this was going to be the case. I believe on Monday it was. But Ozzie Albies, it was announced that he would be starting a rehab assignment with Gwinnett, and he did that on Tuesday. And the good news is that Ozzie Albies, he looked pretty good in that game against Gwinnett. I believe he had 2 hits, maybe had 3, but one included a 3-run home run. But the key factor in all this is that, as we discussed, I believe 1 or 2 weeks ago, Ozzie Albies is going to be batting exclusively right-handed. And that's what he did tonight in Gwinnett. His home run that he hit did come off against the left-hander. On Wednesday night, he'll play again. He'll be facing the right-hander. And there's a pretty good indication that if he has another successful game without any setbacks, he likely will be back for when the Braves go to Miami to face the Marlins. But I bring this all up to say this point, Stephen. Listen, you go with Ozzie Albies in your lineup versus not having him in your lineup, especially with what we're playing with right now. But and I'm perfectly fine with him batting right-handed. I'm not really concerned about, do you experiment with that right now? Yes, just getting in the lineup. I'm excited about what we could see, but to be honest with you, I also am kind of like, why are we doing this now? Why could this not have been done earlier? Maybe that's a flawed way of looking at things. We should be excited to see Ozzie Albies back, but you also have to wonder, is it a bit too little, too late? I guess better late than never, but just your thoughts on, Ozzie Albies, a successful night on Tuesday, and it's seeming like his imminent return to the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, they reported that he was going to do a rehab game tonight, a rehab game tomorrow, and then could be with the team as early as Friday in Miami. Of course, I'm happy to have him back. He's one of the Braves' star players. The funny thing is, if you look at the numbers, like Merrifield has actually had a better year offensively than Ozzie has, at least as long as Witt has been with the Braves. I think Witt's got like a 105 WRC plus in his time at second base, and Ozzie's got like a 97 or 98. So, to be honest, the Braves didn't really drop in offensive production that much with Ozzie out. And if I'm being completely honest, I think they probably improved a bit defensively with him out. I'll be very interested to see what they do if they put Witt at third base. Gio Urshela's bat has really struggled most of the time he's been with the Braves. His defense has been solid, but Witt's a better hitter. So I'm curious to see when Ozzie comes back if Witt moves over to third. Now, obviously, Merrifield still has that broken foot, so that matters. Or if they put Merrifield on the bench and Gio is still going to start at third. I'm curious to see what they do there, because I don't think it's entirely clear what the plan is. But yeah, it'd be good to have Ozzie back. I do think it's probably going to be a little too little, too late. Ozzie is of the Acuna, Riley, Ozzie trio, Ozzie is certainly the least impactful of those three in terms of being able to dramatically affect the lineup. He's just kind of a league average hitter at this point in his career. But it's good to have him back. I mean, that's one less replacement player you're probably going to be playing in your everyday lineup, and we'll see what they do with Witt for third base. But yeah, it'll be fun to have him back. It'll be fun to see him hit right-handed against right-handed pitching, assuming that's what they do. We've always wanted to see that. So if nothing else, it'll be a fun experiment for, I mean, there's only 10 games left in the season when he comes back or something like that. So, but yeah, it'll be good to have him back. And maybe, he is a ball of energy. He's a big leader in that clubhouse. Who knows? Maybe if having him back on the field, the team gets hot and can finish the year strong and maybe sneak into the playoffs. I mean, it's not dead yet. They're not dead yet. The fact that they have 3 games with the Mets left is a big part of why they're not dead yet, but they're getting very close to dead. Like they're right on the edge of, final nail in the coffin. Because once you get 3 or 4 games back this late in the year, that's pretty much it. So, and they're 2 games back now. So they're right on the edge of the season being over. And we'll see if Ozzie can come back and help with any of that. I'm pessimistic that that's what's going to happen, but it's baseball. Weird stuff happens, and that could certainly happen.
And I will say this, if you're pessimistic right now about the Braves' chances to miss the playoffs, it is perfectly logical to have that feeling. Again, what this team has done over the past 48 hours, there's really no other choice but to kind of look at it and be like, how can we expect this team to turn it around just overnight like they need to in order to give us a chance that we need to be in to make the playoffs? But hey, you know what? That's the point of us discussing the Braves on this podcast. It's to look at all scenarios. And when Steven says that they're not dead yet, he's exactly right. And as a matter of fact, it quickly can change for the better, just like it changed on Sunday night from, again, the Braves being on the verge of maybe being a game up on the Mets entering Monday to now 48 hours, they're 2 games behind the Mets. We could easily see fortunes change moving forward the rest of this week. And the reason why that is because the Braves have 2 games left in Cincinnati. The Braves have been the most productive team, National League team, when facing the Reds at Great American Ballpark over the past 6 years. No National League team has a better OPS at Cincinnati's home ballpark as an opponent than the Braves. They showed tonight they can hit home runs even better than the Reds. It's just that the Reds hit the home run at the right time. The point that I'm getting at is this, is that the Braves have Spencer Spellenbach and they've got Chris Sale going over the next 2 days. They have the better pitchers going each night. This offense also has the higher ceiling than the Reds. They have a chance to win this series. They've got to win the next 2 games. They absolutely have to. Then you go to Miami, you face the Marlins. If the Braves can win 4 out of the next 5 games, I think they're in at least a decent position going into that series against the Mets to start next week. But the problem is that it's not a if they do it. They have to do it. There's no choice now. We've said it for 2 weeks. There's absolutely no other option now, in my opinion. The Braves have to win at least 4 out of their next 5 games. They are more than capable, fully capable of not only doing it, but winning all 5 games and doing it in convincing to dominant fashion. It's just that this team has given us no reason for us to have faith that they will do it. But with the fact that the Mets have 1 game left against the Nationals, and then they've got 4 against the Phillies, the Braves, if they can win 4 out of 5 or their next 5, they could find themselves still being in a favorable position going into that 3-game series with the Mets at home next week. Steven, they're at a point where they have no choice. And they're also at a point where I've got no reason to believe in them. But I once again will shine the spotlight on this. This team has bounced back time and time again in recent weeks. I may be looking at this from too much of a positive angle, but it quickly can change if they can just lock in.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. Like, if we want to be, this is certainly not my personality and certainly not how I feel at the moment, but like, if you just want to be ultra positive, like ultra, sunshine guy, then the Braves play the Reds in the next two games. They've got Schwellenbach and Sale. They're, two of their probably best pitchers at this point with how Max has been pitching lately. So you feel great about those two games, that the Braves can win those two games. And then you go to Miami for 3, and the Braves have played the Marlins really well this year. And the Mets have to play Philadelphia for 4. And Philadelphia is still playing for stuff. Like Philadelphia is still trying to clinch the bye, the first round bye for, which only goes to the top 2 seeds. And the Dodgers, the Phillies, and the Brewers are all pretty close for that. So like it's not going to be a situation where the Phillies are packing it in. Philadelphia goes, or New York goes to Philadelphia for 4 games. The Braves go to Miami for 3 games, right? If you take care of business these next 2 games against Cincinnati, if you take care of business in Miami, if Philadelphia can help you out, then you get the Mets at home for 3 games. And, if all that other stuff has happened, then there's a good chance by that point you're either tied or maybe only a game back. And then you control your own destiny if you just beat the Mets at home. So, like, if you want to be super positive, you want to be, Mr. Brightside and light at the end of the tunnel and, all that stuff, then absolutely you can talk yourself into it. Like this team, the story of this year is not over yet. But if they play the same style of baseball they played all year, which is, score 6 runs one night and then get shut out the next night, and then score 5 runs, look good, and then, score 1 run the next 2 games. If they do that crap, then, this season's going to end pretty quickly and we're all going to have a pretty wide open October. But it's not over. As crazy as that sounds, it's not over. The Braves certainly have the schedule advantage the next week or so, and then the Braves get the Mets at home for 3. So, and Chris Sale is going to pitch in that series. So that's another big part of this. So it's definitely not over. The way the team is playing right now, it feels over, but mathematically and based on the schedule, they're still alive.
And history also suggests it's not over. Let's go back 2 years. It happened a little bit later in September, Stephen, but let's go back exactly 2 years. 2 years ago, as everybody remembers, the Braves were chasing down the Mets for the division title. We all know what happened in the second to last series of the 2022 season. The Braves sweep the Mets at home, go through DeGrom and Chris Bassett and Max Scherzer. Just an absolutely, incredible comeback, and the fashion that they did it by sweeping the Mets at home. But what probably is not remembered that much is that in the 8-game stretch before that Mets series 2 years ago, in the first 3 games of that 8-game stretch, the Braves lost 3 in a row. And then they won 4 out of their next 5 to set up the ability to catch the Mets in that 3-game series. Fast forward 2 years, we've now lost our last 3 games. We've got 5 games left until we face the Mets with the playoffs on the line. Can the Braves repeat history, win at least 4 out of their next 5 games, and then face the Mets at home with the ability to earn that playoff spot? So if you are a believer in history repeating itself, and you are a believer in fate, we're running the same script, or we have a chance to run the same script that we did 2 years ago. I'm a lot less confident now than I was then, but we've done it before, and hey, we're fully capable of doing it again. So
I'll say this.
Go ahead.
I'll say this: that 2022 Mets team had a hell of a lot more talent than the 2024 team. Like the Braves had to beat DeGrom and Scherzer in 2022 to sweep that series. And the Mets have been playing unbelievable baseball for 4 months. I'm not taking anything away from them, but they've certainly been playing above their talent level. If you just look at name for name, track record for track record, talent for talent, like the Mets are much less talented than that 2022 team. Now the Braves are less talented as well because they have as many injuries as they have. But yeah, it's not inconceivable that the idea that the Mets could, start playing a little worse and the Braves could start playing a little better and, bada bing, bada bang, bada boom, they're in the playoffs. Like it's not a crazy notion. It certainly could happen. It's just, if you watch the Braves play the last few games, it's tough to envision it happening. But like you said, they bounce back a lot, and they still have enough talent, in my opinion, especially with this, the starting staff, and with Sale going potentially 3 more times before the year's over. It's not over, but if they don't win the next 2 games in Cincinnati, it's going to feel very, very much over.
Absolutely. It's not the playoffs, but we're in must-win territory. The Braves have got to win at least 4 out of their next 5, and really the only way that they can do it is the offense going. And when it would be great for it not to be this simple fact that they were just hitting home runs, it would be great to create and convert some run-scoring opportunities. But for Stephen Tolbert, you can find him at _outliers on Twitter/X. My name is Shawn Coleman. You can find me at StatsSAC on Twitter/X, Hammer Territory, wherever you choose to listen to podcasts. Download the content. That's where we'll be for free. Also across all forms of social media, and we are a part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. Make sure you check out all the great shows from Foul Territory. For Stephen Tolbert, my name is Shawn Coleman. Again, I know that things are dire right now, but the Braves have a very good opportunity to potentially let deja vu happen again if they can just get the offense going. I know we've said it all year long, and I know that there's plenty of reason out there not to have any faith that they'll do it. But if they figure it out, good things can still happen. Until next time, go Braves. We'll talk to you again soon here on the Hammer Territory Podcast.